My mom's friend brushed my arm and said, "Some secrets don't need words." The day I decided to stop fighting for my own life was the same day someone else decided to fight for it instead. I didn't know it then. I couldn't have known it. I was sitting in the corner of my mother's living room, hollow-eyed and empty, watching the afternoon light stretch across the floor like it had somewhere better to be, and honestly, so did I. Except I had nowhere left to go. Not really. Not anymore. My name is Daniel. I was 26 years old, recently discharged from the military after a roadside explosion took the full use of my legs and most of my confidence along with it. I had come back to my mother's apartment not as a son returning home in triumph, but as a broken thing being quietly stored away. That's how it felt. The wheelchair was new. The silence between me and the world was older than I could remember. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of human connection, like this video, share it with someone who needs it, drop a comment below, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so stories like this one can keep reaching the people who need them most. My mother, Carol, was a gentle woman who never quite knew what to say to me after I came home. She'd hover at doorways, offer soup I didn't eat, and then retreat to her bedroom where I could hear the muffled sound of her crying into her pillow at night. We were two people drowning in the same house, too proud and too scared to reach for each other. The apartment was small and sun-filled in a way that felt almost cruel, all that warmth pouring through the windows while everything inside felt like January. It was on a Thursday afternoon in late October when everything began to shift, though I wouldn't understand it until much later. My mother had invited her friend Margaret over for coffee. Margaret was a woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair, quiet eyes, and a way of moving through a room like she had already made peace with everything in it. I had met her briefly once before, years ago, before deployment, before everything. She hadn't changed much. I had changed completely. I barely acknowledged her when she came in. I wheeled myself toward the window and positioned myself there as I often did, facing outward, watching the street below as if belonging to it was still somehow possible. I heard the murmur of the two women in the kitchen, the clink of cups, the ordinary sounds of a world continuing without asking my permission. I had become very good at existing on the margins of things. Then Margaret came and sat in the armchair beside me. She didn't say anything immediately. She just sat there with her coffee and looked out the window too, following my gaze toward the street where a little boy was chasing a dog around a parked car and laughing so hard he could barely breathe. We watched it together in silence. I waited for her to say something comforting and hollow, something about God's plan or time healing all wounds, or how lucky I was to be alive. People said those things constantly, and each time something inside me clenched like a fist. But Margaret didn't say any of those things. She just sat beside me and breathed, calm and steady, like a person who had learned that presence was its own language. After a long while, she reached over and brushed her hand gently along my forearm. Just once, barely a touch, the way you might reassure a frightened animal. And she said softly and with absolute certainty, "Some secrets don't need words." Then she stood up, collected her cup, and walked back to the kitchen. I sat there for a very long time after that. I didn't know why those 5 words hit me the way they did. I had been to therapy. I had heard carefully constructed sentences designed to open me up like a locked box. None of them had worked. But something about the way Margaret said it, not as advice, not as a question, not as an invitation to explain myself, undid something in my chest. It was as if she had looked at me without the filter of pity or confusion or expectation, and she had simply seen me. Not the wheelchair, not the injury, not the son who had come home wrong. Just me, carrying something I didn't have words for yet, and her telling me quietly that I didn't need them. Not right now, not yet. I started to cry, quietly at first, then in a way that shook my whole body. I faced the window so neither of them could see, but I think Margaret knew. I think she had planned it that way. Over the weeks that followed, something subtle began to change. I can't point to a single dramatic moment. It was more like a slow thaw, the way ice on a river doesn't break all at once, but softens gradually until one morning you look out and the water is moving again. I started eating my mother's soup. I started answering when she stood in doorways. I started going outside. At first just to the sidewalk, then to the end of the block, then to the park 2 streets over where I'd sit and watch people the way I used to watch the world from my forward operating base. Carefully, with a kind of exhausted reverence for the strangeness of ordinary life. Margaret visited twice more that month. She never brought up what she had said. We talked about other things, books, weather, a documentary she had watched about migratory birds. But every time she left, I felt a little more solid, a little more like someone who was still in the process of becoming rather than someone who had already finished falling apart. My mother noticed. She didn't say much about it directly. She was still learning how to speak to me, and I was still learning how to let her. But one evening she touched my shoulder as she passed behind my chair, and the touch lingered a half-second longer than it needed to. It was enough. We were learning each other's language again, one careful gesture at a time. I eventually returned to therapy, but differently this time. Not because I was ordered to, not because I was trying to fix what felt unfixable, but because I had begun to believe, quietly and carefully, that I was worth the effort, that something in me deserved to keep going. I don't know how to explain where that belief came from exactly, but I know it started on a Thursday afternoon in late October, when a woman with silver-streaked hair sat beside me at a window, barely touched my arm, and told me in 5 words what no one else had ever managed to say. Some things are too large for language. Some grief is too complicated for explanation. Some healing begins not with answers, but with someone simply sitting beside you and letting you know they see the weight you're carrying, even if neither of you will ever give it a name. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or of a kindness you once received, or of a part of yourself still waiting to be seen, please leave a comment below and tell us. Share this video with someone who might need it today. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Kindness Corner, because every week we bring you stories that remind us what it means to be human. Before this story ends, we'd love to know, has someone ever said something small to you that changed everything? Drop it in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Daniel still lives with the weight of what happened to him. He probably always will. But he is also still here, wheeling himself to the park, watching the river thaw, learning that survival and living are 2 entirely different things, and choosing, slowly and imperfectly, to reach for the second one. Some secrets don't need words. And some of the most important things in life are said in a single, quiet, barely there touch.